social skills are pivotal to success. And that's what we're about on Falling for Learning, right? Getting your kid on track for learning and staying on track for success. So they can't just have the brains and the skills, but no social skills. That does not work. Hi, thank you so much for joining the Falling for Learning podcast. I am TD Flenaugh. We have this podcast to help parents and caregivers with having the resources, strategies, and tools needed to make sure that their children are on track for learning and to stay on track for success. Thank you so much for joining the Falling for Learning podcast. How is everyone doing today? This is a bright, beautiful morning, and something that's going on with us today is I actually paid for someone to clean my house because I am overwhelmed with all the things that I have to do. So I paid someone to clean, and it just feels so good to have someone to take that off of my hands. And so I'm feeling light and airy because someone, did the heavy duty lifting and of the cleaning and the deep cleaning for me. And my house looks good and I feel good and I'm not all worn out. And so, as I'm building my podcast and, promoting my book and all of those things, it's great to kind of take some things off of my plate. And I'm very excited about that. So that's what's going on with me. Today, we're going to talk about the social lives of our teens and tweens. Now, let's get into it. Now, I am talking about platonic relationships, and we can talk about those romantic relationships at a different time, but today we're going to get into their social lives, talking about platonic relationships in general. And this is really important because according to research from 2018, so this is before the pandemic, so we could just kind of imagine what it is like now, is that 98% of teens had friends or close friends, right? And that's great. But you may or may not have your child in that 2% that doesn't have any close friends, and that could be a major issue for them. Now, it says that according to this research by Pew Research, that the children in the lower income, it was about 7% of children in low income families had no close friends. And then only 1% of high income earning families, their teens and tweens, had no close friends. So that could be because of the various things. Of course, a lot of times those children are busy taking care of business. They might be taking care of siblings. They might be working outside the home, and cultivating close friends may just not be in their day because of all the responsibilities they may have to take on. They could be ashamed of what's going on in their home sometimes if their family's really struggling, and they might be really just close to their family members instead of outside friendships. So certain times in my life, I could, agree with that a little bit and have that situation where I'm just kind of like, I'm doing me and I really don't have time for other people because I'm taking care of my sister and all these different things. So it's something that may happen. Now, if your kid is one of those kids that is in the 2% that do not have close friends, I feel like it's important for you to know that there are things that you can do to help your child. So one of the things is make sure you are a part of some kind of community organization. Now, a lot of times this is built into the family. If you are religious and you go to a church regularly, you are regularly in a community where kids are able to socialize and talk to kids and have different groups that they meet with regularly, like a Sunday school or something like that. They might even join the choir like I was in when I was a kid. My daughter was in choir for a long time. So that naturally builds in some friends because you are socializing and hanging out and part of events that are more than, just school related, just business related kind of things. And you kind of naturally fall into friendship And so think about that. You may also think about extracurricular activities. Students who and children who are definitely in types of clubs. Let's say they're part of the robotics club. There's a lot of time we're traveling together, we're hanging out together in places and building things. And so we're able to relate to each other and build those friendships naturally. Again, I'm saying falling into friendship because it's just kind of a natural thing, right? Because you are spending that extra time together and spending time with each other, you get to know each other and get to know things about each other's personality. And that is really hooks you into each other and enjoy and know the benefits of that person. And that's where you become friends. So those are a couple of tips if your child is in that little minority of kids that does not have close friends, and how can we build that in for them and help them navigate how to find friends. And why is it so important that they have friends, right? Sometimes we're real serious parents and we're doing our parenting thing, we're doing our working thing, we're doing our business thing, like we're doing so much. And I'm definitely one of those parents that does a lot. And so thinking about maintaining friendships may not be your thing, especially when my daughter was young, I didn't. And so my child might just be looking at what I'm doing and doing something similar, not cultivating friendships. So you can think about how to cultivate your own friendship. On Falling for Learning, I often talk about this. If we see a deficit or an issue with our child that needs to be addressed, sometimes we might see that same deficit or issue in our own selves. We may need to get ourselves together before we can try to get our kids together, or simultaneously, of course. But know that a lot of times our children are mirroring things that we're doing. So if you're not cultivating friendships and your child's not cultivating friendships, then you need to think about how to become a part of a community organization like a church or something. You guys can meet regularly and naturally find friends. The other thing is, if you have friends and your child is not really developing friendships that you see that are healthy or that are lasting, you need to model some of what's going on and explain to them, oh, this is my friend Julie. We've been friends since we were blah, 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 right? It could be we met at work, we met in college, we met in the 3rd grade, whatever it is. Tell the story and then tell some things that your friend has done for you, and show yourself and explain, oh, it's Julie's birthday coming up. I'm going to get her a present. I'm going to do something. I want to think about my friend. And modeling and explaining some of what's going on if they don't naturally have that social life that you feel like they should have. But not just you feel like they should have. I just want to say something that a lot of people don't tell you about. So let me tell you, lean in. Relationships often make or break careers. So a lot of people get promotions and they get referred to a job because of a friend that someone has developed, right? They'll say, okay, that's the person. Hire TD because I'm your friend and you're the principal of that school, and you should know that TD is a great asset, right? When you don't develop those friendships, or someone else didn't develop that friendship, then you can't speak into and make things happen the way it could if you're just like a regular person that comes and has a stellar application or whatever, and no one's speaking in on your behalf. So that's very important. Relationships make or break careers a lot of times. So developing those social skills are pivotal to success. And that's what we're about on Falling for Learning, right? Getting your kid on track for learning and staying on track for success. So they can't just have the brains and the skills, but no social skills. That does not work. People would rather hire someone that they could get along with and that they vibe with than someone who's just great at their job, right? Because someone who's like mediocre can be brought up to that level if they have a good relationship with them and a rapport and they could learn and they're coachable. So just consider that. It is very important for kids to be able to navigate on a social level. here's another reason why kids need to be able to navigate socially, is because they actually, and we see it if you're a teacher out there, or if you're just a parent who has, been around kids a lot and you're observant, kids mature one another. So after the pandemic, we could definitely see that some kids are delayed socially because they do not have the social skills and experience that they need. And so just let me tell you a quick story about my nephew. So my nephew is a wonderful kid. And, a lot of kids are just drawn to him. They love him. He's like a natural leader. But one thing about him, he was very emotional when he was younger. So I'm talking 8 years old, 9 years old. He's very emotional, crying about things. And, we would tell him, I'm his aunt, his dad, his grandmother, just different people, like, stop crying, you got to get over this, you can be okay. And so one day, and I just was watching it from afar, not saying anything, not even making myself known, there was some kind of event, and they were in a competition. His team didn't win. He's crying. And another girl who was the same age as him was like, what are you crying about? And he's like, I didn't win. And he's crying. And she's like, so what? I didn't win either. We didn't win. What are you crying about? She genuinely didn't understand what he was crying about, and didn't understand, just was like rejecting, like, no, this is not anything to cry about. And do you know, he like dried it up, and he just, kind of reflected on it. I'm just watching and just listening, and she's like, she just couldn't get it. Like, what are you crying about? And that little question, that was like a genuine question. Like, I don't get what you're crying about. She wasn't making fun of him or anything. She just was like, what are we crying about? And he like dried it up, and he was just like, no, like, I gotta get it together. Like, kids mature one another, and no matter what we said as caregivers or parents, whatever, it didn't matter. He was gonna cry. But her, in that little moment, it was like 30-40 seconds, she's just like, what? And it just made him reflect. It made him like sit up, like stand, like, yeah, I don't know, like. And I just, like, it was just like case in point. Like, kids mature one another. They give each other social cues about what works, what doesn't work, what's effective, what's mature, what's not mature. And then definitely when kids came back from the pandemic, I definitely noticed there was some social delay. And, one little thing that I'll say is, definitely when I work in a high school, like, some of our ninth graders are giving musty seventh graders, that's all I'll say about that. And again, that's socially, that a lot of that's worked out in middle school. As someone who's worked in middle school and worked in high school, a lot of that is worked out in middle school. And it hasn't been worked out for these kids because they have little social delays, but they'll get it together, So that's all I'll say about that. Because, our kids, they come, as parents, we know our kids stink, but we know it is something that's correctable, and it's something like, as they get older, it will.
Hello, parents. All across the United States, we have students who don't know how to read well and who don't know how to write well. Now, I'm not here to shame you, but I am here to blame you. If your child is behind, it is partially your responsibility and your fault. That next generation needs to be the one that's telling your story, not other people, not other families, not other races or ethnicities. Your family needs to be able to tell your story. And if your child can't write well, who's going to tell your story? I have written 2 books to help address these issues. It is the Rewrite Method, the Parent and Educator Guide for Getting Middle Schoolers to Fall in Love with Writing, and the Rewrite Method Workbook, the Parent and Educator Action Plan for Getting Middle Schoolers to Fall in Love with Writing. This book gives you step-by-step and easy to use and implement activities to make sure that your child not only gets better at writing, but loves to write.
Join us for Well Educated Wednesdays every Wednesday on Instagram Live at Falling for Learning. It is a free parent question and answer session where parents can ask questions, learn about resources, strategies, and tips to make sure their children are on track for learning and stay on track for success. That's every Wednesday on Instagram Live at Falling for Learning. We look forward to seeing you and helping the next generation thrive. Correct themselves. They want to smell good. They'll start taking care of themselves. But socially and in maturity level, they're not there yet. And some of that has to do with pandemic. Like by that point, a lot of kids have worked that kink out and okay, let me get myself together with some Axe body spray, whatever they're using, to make sure that they smell good and that they're taking care of themselves. But when you see a little bit of that developmental delay, you'll see some of that there. It hasn't quite worked itself out yet. So it's okay. We love them kids, stinky or not. We just have to help them through that situation. Now, let's talk about the wrong friends. So and I know that sometimes kids get on the wrong social bus, right? They're with the crowd you don't want them to be with. Now, this is very difficult for us because we want to just tell them right away, this is not the right friend. This is an idiot. This person's trying to, lead you in the wrong direction. But again, kids have to learn to take responsibility for themselves. If they're going to be around people who lie all the time or who are skipping school and stuff like that, there are consequences for it. What we can do as a parent, not as friends, but as parents, is to really listen and to be non-judgmental in some of what they're telling us. Now, of course, you want to, draw a hard line at certain places, but a lot of times we want to be a person that they could talk to and a sounding board. Remember, if you did not watch the episode on how to keep open communication with our teens, I'll give you the link below so you can make sure that you check that out, because there are some things that we could do to turn our teens off. We don't want to do that. But of course, they're at a frustrating time for us and a frustrating time for them sometimes. And so we want to still keep the door open for communication. So we want to talk to them. We want to listen to them. We don't want to just jump to judgments and advice. But we want to listen to them so we can be a person that they could come to, right? Because again, as we talked about before, if they close that door and stop talking to us, our kids are in a lot of danger, because who are they going to talk to? The friends that don't know nothing? The friends that are in their young and dumb phase? Okay, I'm going to stop there. It's just the truth. They're in their young and dumb phase. And we've got to continue to be a resource for them if we want them to be on track in their lives. And if we turn that off for them, and they may not tell us, then we are causing some damage for our kids inadvertently. So we got to still be open for them and make them feel that you are someone to talk to. And you could be concerned and you could be upset about what they say, but you don't have to show that to them, because you want to be able to keep that communication open for them so they could come to you and get advice and listen to you about real things that are going on with them. Okay? So be open, listen to what they're saying. And you may not talk badly about that friend. Kim is terrible. She's a mess or whatever. What you could later on talk about some friends you've had in the past. And you don't have to bring it up right away, but over the next couple of days or whatever, bring up a friend situation you had in the past where something wrong happened because you were trying to follow a friend or whatever your stinking thinking was back then. And this is what I mean by stinking thinking. A friend of mine who had was a former addict or whatever, I guess she said this is a word that they use for each other when they're like, using alcohol or something. They have like these stupid justifications for why would they do things, and as they're coming through and they're sharing with each other, they talk about that stupid idea that they had, their stinking thinking, or things they said to themselves that justified the drug use or started the drug use or continued it or whatever. But the stinking thinking I'm saying in this case is more like stinking thinking like when they're young and dumb, they are having thought process that don't really make any sense. Sometimes we'll look at them like, what were you thinking? And they weren't thinking, or their thought process was really just screwed up. And that is stinking thinking too, right? So you can let your kids in on when you were doing some stinking thinking. You could look back and say, I was young and I was dumb, and this is my thought process. Now, it don't make no sense now to you, right? You're like, what the hell was I thinking? But at the time, you could tell them, oh, I just thought, only girls who were loose got pregnant. Not girls who just had sex, right? Anyone who's having sex can get pregnant. But my thought process was like, just girls who are loose were going to get pregnant. And here it happens to be, whatever. So you tell them what your thought process was back then. And tell them, how your friend convinced you or whatever, and then how that turned out. And then find a way to naturally put it into maybe not that conversation where you're hearing the dumb thing that your friend, told your child's friend told you, but work it into the conversation and then work it in different ways. Now, I don't know, don't be like me, because my daughter always says, like, every story you came up with was like, it ended up in gang rape. And I'm like, did it? And she's like, yes, everything ended up in gang rape. So, I mean, there's some nightmares out there. But you do want to think about how you bring up cautionary tales for your child and talk to them about these things, because even though they may not listen to everything, but if you put it in the right package for them, right? Not bad mouthing their friend right then and there and saying that friend's trash, they're stupid. But bringing it up in, subtle ways, and in, you hear something on the news, you see something online, and you just work in that conversation. You're not talking about their friend Kim directly, but you're putting things in their head and then talking about those cautionary tales. That's a way that you could get your kid out of some of that. Now, does that mean they're going to listen to everything that we say? It does not mean that. But definitely us doing the clap down on their friend Kim and saying how stupid she is, and you're gonna shut them down. And again, you don't always know when they shut down. They might just be looking at you, nodding their head, and no, I'm not gonna talk to her about Kim no more. That's my friend, I love that girl. And they might love their friend to death. Their friend might be stupid as hell, but they love them. Just be honest. Like, this is what real. And the same thing happened to us. Think about when you were a kid. Can your parent just say, don't ever talk to fill in the blank again? She's stupid. He's an idiot. No. I'm still going to school and talking to my friend. My mom don't know. She's real funny. She's, some people are just magnetic. I have some friends who are like, and some students who just everywhere they go, people want to be by them. They talk to them. And you don't know what that is. It's just that it thing. And just because your mom says stay away from them doesn't mean they're going to stay away from them. So all you can do is gently guide them, and gently, because they are in control of their social lives a lot more than we would want to. So, because this is another statistic you need to know. Even before the pandemic, kids were likely, 15% of kids are to have friends that they met online. Close friends that they met online first. And they're more likely to hang out with their friends every day online rather than see them. So we really have limited control over who they see and what they do. We could give them advice and guidance, but we cannot be with them all the time, especially knowing how some of us parent, how busy we are. We do not have control, but we can just make sure that we're communicating with them in a respectful way, a calm way, a non-judgmental way, so that we can be a source of support and guidance in their lives, right? We do not want to lock ourselves out of that, because some of you have already locked yourselves out. You don't even know it. Okay? So how would you know that? It's a great question. How would you know that you have locked yourself out of your child's social life already? Well, first of all, they're just talking to you about surface level things. They're just saying, I don't know, yes, no to you. They're talking very little. They might talk about something very surface level about the Lakers or, but not anything about their social life. You don't know the names of their friends, right? So you may want to talk to them about who their friends are. Ask them to invite their friends over. The more you can be involved, the better, right? You want to meet some of these friends. You want to get a vibe around them, I lived with my sister when she was in her undergrad years, and she was going to UCLA, and I was already working as a teacher, and I had my daughter with us. She was already, I was a single mom for a while, and let me tell you, my sister would bring people in the house, and within 15 seconds or less, I'd be like, this is an idiot. This is a dummy. Why would you be around this person? It was just so quick and so clear in my mind when they walked through the door. They would say something stupid like, oh, why is your house organized this way? This real world weird stuff. I remember one time my daughter was watching like Cheetah Girls or something, and her friend was like, are we just going to sit here and watch Cheetah Girls? Or can we like go to your room? So again, where my daughter could hear her, how you gonna poo-poo what a kid is watching on TV? That's so ignorant. You should have enough sense to know this is a kid show and this is what she's watching. And don't try to make it sound like negative and say, oh, can we go into your room and talk? Why can't you just say that? You got to say something negative about what she's doing. Again, I knew that they were trash when I met them, like within 10 seconds, 10, 15 seconds. And of course, she would come to me and say, so-and-so did this and that. She stole this. She did whatever it was. She lied to me about this. It's always like a bull crap story that happened because that friend that I said. But do you know what happened? You know what happened when I saw him? When I saw him, I was like, ugh. I had attitude. I rolled my eyes, because I was young too. And so I wasn't as, I was not as savvy, right? So I was like, ugh, this idiot. And sometimes I would say, like, how are you going to come in talking about somebody's, so I would confront them. It would just be a thing right away. And what happened, my sister was like, oh, you're just a mean person. She wouldn't listen to anything I had to say when it had to do with her friends, because she's like, you're just mean. You don't know what's going on. And I didn't maintain like real close relationships at that time either, because I was fully in it as a fairly new teacher, as a mom, and I had my daughter in activities. Like I was busy. I didn't, maintaining friendships didn't happen that much. People would call me and I probably wouldn't get back to them a week later. Some of my friends were okay with that, but some friends were very offended by it. So, but actually in this case, my daughter was not affected by like my lack of friends, because she's a social butterfly. She meets lots of people and, people are attracted to her, everything. So she's good in that respect, that respect. But, my sister, she wasn't a teenager. She was really a young adult at that time in her early 20s, but I really just turned her off because she's like, she's just mean, so don't be that person that is being just the mean parent, and, turning people off, her friends, when you meet your child's friends, when you meet them right away. be a person that can be cordial to the friends and then drop little hints about, what is a good friend. Model for them what you're doing with your friends, what your friend has done for you. Oh, my friend was so nice. They did this for me. They were thinking about me. Oh, your friend's birthday's coming up. What are you going to do for them? How can we support? So just thinking about how you can nurture the relationship, give them space to have that social life. Make sure that you aren't just putting down their friends right away. Making sure you're finding ways to cultivate friendships in a natural way for them, getting them involved in activities, you being a part of a community such as a church or some other organization that meets regularly so that your child can be a part of a community and naturally form bonds that way. Explain to them, about how relationships help nurture your success. Your friends, if you have the right friends, will lead you into different paths that are positive. They'll help support you. They're people that you could trust. They're people that could get you jobs sometimes, that help you to get promotions, to help you know and learn new things and present new horizons to you. So it is very important to maintain those friendships. And it's, again, that thing that we really see from the pandemic is that people that are the kids that are each other's age, in their age group, they mature one another. And they are also part of a youth culture that we're not a part of. They have a youth culture that we're not a part of. And that youth culture will be one day running the world. And that way of knowing and being in that space and time is going to be what's going to be their bread and butter. That's going to help them move forward in the world successfully. And so they need to learn it. And we can't teach it to them. They have to be able to communicate with the people that are in their lives and their age range, right? They're going to be sharing secrets about intimate partners and stuff like that we may not be a part of and we maybe shouldn't be a part of. And so it's really important that they are able to navigate social lives and relationships beyond us as parents, because we were once everything for them, but for them to really blossom and flourish, they need to be able to navigate their social lives successfully. So we are glad that you have joined us on the Falling for Learning podcast. And thank you. Have a great week.
Thanks again for supporting the Falling for Learning podcast. New episodes go live every Saturday at 5 p.m. You can watch us on youtube.com at Falling for Learning or listen on all major podcast platforms such as Apple, Google, Audible, Spotify, and much more. For more resources, visit fallinginlovewithlearning.com. We really appreciate you. Have a wonderful week.